Welcome to our pilot series of Operation Transmit Leadership. Operation Transmit Leadership is an audio program of local leaders providing insight and mentoring about servant leadership. This program is produced by Michiana-based volunteer team. Program guests are local leaders from all backgrounds, professions, and callings who are recognized for demonstrating outstanding leadership by serving others.
Thank you for joining us at Operation Transmit Leadership for our very first in a series of servant leadership mentoring programs. I'm Jody Russell, and I'm joined by Operation Transmit Leadership member Kayla Myers, and together we'll be interviewing a very well-known Michiana servant leader, Juliann Jankowski, chair of the Association of Leadership Programs. Juliann was the executive director of the Leadership South Bend, Mishawaka for the past 12 years. She has spent 10 years in radio and in television in Michigan, Indiana, and New York City, as well as 10 years in higher education, serving in various administrative roles, including campus dean for Davenport University. She has a bachelor's degree in telecommunications from Michigan State University and a master's degree in administration from the University of Notre Dame. Some of Juliann's servant leadership examples include Rotary, the Excel Center, South Bend Civic Theater, the Indiana Leadership Association, and the Michiana Diversity Leadership Initiative. Juliann, welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here.
Juliann, we have invited you here because you are a successful and recognized servant leader in our community. So in your own words, could you please describe what servant leadership is?
Well, servant leadership is really all about meeting the needs of others. And that's one of the things I love so much about servant leadership is because it's often said that before you become a leader, it's all about growing yourself, developing and learning and getting yourself to a good place where you can then lead others. And when you become a leader, it's all about the growth and development of others. And Robert Greenleaf was really the one who coined the term servant leadership back in the early 70s. And he liked to say, do those served grow as persons? Do they, while being served, become healthier, wiser, freer, more autonomous, more likely themselves to become servants? And so that's the way I look at servant leadership and how I would describe it.
Thank you.
In your opinion, what makes servant leadership different from other leadership styles?
Well, I would say it's really that intense focus on others. Like I said, it is really about the people that you serve, whether they be employees, whether they be your children, whether it's other individuals that you work with in the community, those individuals you're serving with, really trying to figure out what do they need to be successful? How are you going to be able to help them grow and develop to be the best possible person that they can be? And some of the things that you need to look at when you're a servant leader are, being things like empathetic, making sure that you really can walk in their shoes. Servant leaders, before they make a decision, they try to walk in someone else's shoes and put themselves in their place. Servant leaders are great listeners. They're very, very good at listening to others. They build trust. They're good at building community, building teamwork. And they're really, really committed to the growth of others. So those are all important servant leadership traits. And I think what makes servant leadership differ from some of those other styles. Now, self-awareness is still very important as it pertains to leadership, but servant leadership really focuses on the growth and development of those you served and working side by side with those people as well.
So Juliann, who or what inspired you to practice servant leadership?
Well, I have to say the first time I heard about the concept of servant leadership was when I was a participant in Leadership South Bend, Mishawaka, many years ago, back in 97, 98. And I had never heard of servant leadership before. And Pat Cressy, who is a servant leader that I greatly admire, gave the background on it. And it really hit home with me. And when we gave examples of servant leaders and the qualities that we saw in servant leaders, it really made me think about my own leadership style and what I was doing to practice servant leadership and things that I could do to become a better servant leader. Some of the other areas or some of the other individuals and organizations that also prompted me to learn more about servant leadership and be inspired to be a servant leader are authors such as Dr. Kent Keith. He has some phenomenal books out there. He used to run the Greenleaf Center for Servant Leadership in Indianapolis. He's now teaching servant leadership in Singapore, and he has just written a plethora of books that are very inspirational and gives great examples of servant leadership. Also, Jim Hunter is another author and public speaker that we actually brought here to the Michiana area to give presentations on servant leadership. And he's written an excellent book called The Servant. And it's a parable and very easy to read and really gives a great synopsis of servant leadership. And the other thing, believe it or not, is my involvement with the Rotary Club. The Rotary Club motto is service above self, and really focusing on the importance of service, about, you know, not only getting our hands dirty and being a part of the community, but really helping others to grow and develop by showing as an example that we're willing to serve. So those are some of the different inspirations that I've had.
Thank you.
Juliann, can you describe for us what motivates you to be a servant leader?
Well, I just think servant leadership is so important for our community, for the people that we serve, and it's really about doing the right thing, because when we put others' needs first, we're doing the right thing. We're paying attention to them, we're listening to them, we're helping them to grow and develop. And a man I greatly admire, Zig Ziglar, who was a salesperson and then became a well-known motivational speaker. And he had a quote he used to say, "You can get everything you want in life by helping other people get what they want." And I have always tried to live by that and try to help other people to learn and develop and grow to their full potential. And by doing that, I get so many rewards from that. Not only just feeling good about helping them, but also realizing the difference that makes when you pay things like that forward. When you're a servant leader and you can see what happens when people come together. Margaret Mead has another great quote. She says, "Never underestimate the power of a few committed individuals to change the world, because indeed it is the only thing that ever has." And if we get just even a few committed servant leaders to address an issue, bring people together, have a vision, and make things happen, it can truly change not only a community, but it can change the world.
Thank you.
All right, so can you walk us through some history and how you got to where you are in terms of your leadership philosophy and experience?
Sure, I would love to share that, because it's actually a funny story. Because when I first started off in my first leadership position, it was right after college, working for a public television station. And I had this cookie cutter idea of what a leader was, that all leaders looked the same, they acted the same, they were very direct, they had to make sure that everybody knew they were the leader. And so at 5'2", I actually had somebody 6 feet tall tell me how intimidating I was. And I thought, wow, I'm a good leader. They think I'm intimidating. I'm obviously getting all the things done that I need to get done. And I had absolutely no idea what leadership was. And through the years, I've learned and developed the community leadership program that I participated in, that I mentioned, helped so much. And luckily, I was able to have a few great mentors in my life that really modeled what a great leader does. And instead of looking at those cookie cutter leaders that I thought I had to be like, I was able, through their advice and their mentoring of me, to really become more self-aware of who I am, what my strengths are, what motivates me, and with those strengths and inspiration that I have, how I can then help inspire and help others to recognize their strengths and put them to practice and to work. And probably one of the best examples I have of that really impacted me a lot was when I started at Davenport University. There was a young man who worked in admissions, and just the nicest young man, but his skill set was not a match for the position at all. And there came a time where we had to have the discussion about that job expectations were not being met, and that I felt, he needed to look for another position. And I gave him every opportunity to go out and explore, and gave him some books and different things so that he could try to figure out what he was really meant to be. And he ended up leaving the organization. Unfortunately, I ended up after the time, we did have to fire him. And he came back maybe 6 months later, biggest smile you could ever see on his face, and thanked me for helping him to find his niche in life. He became a youth pastor. That was his calling. He was so happy. He was making a difference in lots of people's lives, and he admitted he was miserable doing what he was doing. And I really felt that I employed what I learned through servant leadership to try to help him as much as I possibly could. And in the end, this was just a major transformation for him, and that was, a very, very long time ago, and he is still in as a pastor, and now a pastor of a church. And so I like to share that story that, servant leadership does work. You do have to hold people accountable. You have to make sure that they're filling expectations, but when it's done right, people do grow and develop and become the best person that they can be.
Thank you.
Juliann, can you share a personal servant leadership success story that makes you the most proud?
Well, I have to say the one that makes me the most proud is with my children, because I think it is very, very important to practice servant leadership with your family, with your children, with those around you. And how I do that with my children is, many people think that servant leadership is soft, that it's all about serving others. Oh, can I hold the door for you? Can I get you this? Can I get you that? And it's not. It's so much more. As I mentioned, it's about holding people accountable. It's about sometimes saying things that maybe they don't want to hear, but they need to hear. And that helps them to grow and develop so much. And with my children, I have really tried to practice that since they were very, very young, and showing them responsibility, teaching them about the importance of integrity, showing them how great a feeling you get when you do help others, when you're out volunteering in the community, when you're helping others to learn and grow. Maybe you're helping your friend with tutoring. Maybe you're helping another friend who's going through a difficult situation and being there as a friend, but really helping them and knowing that you're someone that they can trust, you're someone that's going to be honest with them, and you're someone that has, through your heart, their best intentions always in your mind and in your heart. So I have to say that I am so proud of my 3 children, and I really feel that they have embraced the servant leadership concept as well. They work very, very hard. They do hold themselves accountable. They hold others accountable for what has been promised that they said that they would do. And if there are situations that come up, they're not afraid to say, Kayla, we really need to talk about this. How you said you were going to do X, Y, and Z. Well, I don't see that happening. So they're 19, 16, and 11 right now. So the 11-year-old is still a work in progress. But the 16 and 19-year-old, I really feel have been able to embrace the concepts and are doing phenomenal things. And I am just so proud of all 3 of them.
Thank you.
So Juliann, when you began leading through servant leadership, did you see an impact on those around you, and if so, what?
I would definitely say I saw an impact, and when I really started understanding servant leadership was when I was at Davenport University. And at the time I was the director of enrollment management and oversaw the admissions, financial aid, business office, some of those different areas. And I took the time to really sit down with each employee and talk to them about what was going well, what I could help them with, how I could make it easier for them to do their jobs, and also get to know them a little bit better. Part of servant leadership too is just caring, truly caring about those around you. And we like to say something in leadership about how you can never hate someone when you know their story. And when you really take the time to get to know someone's story, it puts that connection on a whole different level. And it's really incredible, the relationships that can be formed when you do that. And I was always taught early on, like I said, I was definitely a novice at leadership. I was taught early on that you don't want to form any relationships with the people you supervise. You got to keep that very, very separate. Don't commingle that. And when I turned that around through servant leadership and really got to know people and learned about what they needed and what could benefit them, what their goals and aspirations were, and what was important to them, it made such a big difference. I just felt better, and people were more and more open to come to me, and I knew that I had a much better pulse on what was going on in my departments, and that if there were any issues, that they weren't going to try to hide them from me. They were going to come to me, and they knew that I would address it and address it fairly. And it made a big difference. And I really think that that's what helped me to be able to become dean of the campus, was that servant leadership. They were looking for someone who could be a good leader, and through the concept of servant leadership and by practicing it, it helped me tremendously.
Thank you.
Juliann, are there recent or past examples of servant leadership from our local history that stands out to you as part of our community's success?
Oh yes, there are definitely so many examples of servant leadership in our community. We really have a giving and caring community, and one that hits close to my heart is just the founding of Leadership South Bend Mishawaka, when Chuck Romer, as a young attorney, came to the president of the Chamber of Commerce and said, I want to do something to really make a difference in the community. I want to do something to get people more engaged so they know what's going on in the community and they can be a part of it. And out of that came Leadership South Bend Mishawaka, and we're the oldest leadership program in the state of Indiana. And from very early on, we focused on servant leadership and passing that on to all the participants of the program so that they could in turn become servant leaders and train other people to be servant leaders as well. And adding the youth program really made a huge difference in putting servant leadership in the schools. And that is, to me, such a great example of someone who just wanted to serve others, wanted to make people better people and to get them engaged. And so many people throughout leadership's history have just been tremendous servant leaders. People like Pat Cressy and all that her and her husband Don have done for the community, and how engaged that they've been and continue to help out so many different organizations. Tom Gripe with the Notre Dame Federal Credit Union and some of the things that he's recently done for employees with the wage that they're being paid, and trying to be a servant leader to his employees. And another example that comes to mind is with the Center for the Homeless and the work that Steve Camilleri is doing there. It's wonderful to walk in there and all the guests, they feel like guests. And Steve may be the CEO, but to them, he's Steve. And I think that says a lot about servant leadership, when the employees of a company look at you, or excuse me, the guests, in this case for the Center for the Homeless, or the employees of a company, either one, when they look at you as a person, someone who is not the boss, but someone who they know cares about them and has the heart of the organization and the mission and vision at their heart, and they want to see it succeed and be the best that it can possibly be. So those are just some examples that come to my mind of servant leadership in action, and there are many, many more. We have just some phenomenal, great servant leadership in our community, and that's why I'm so proud to live here and be a part of it.
Thank you.
So how would you encourage someone to develop servant leadership habits? And then along with that, where would you recommend that they find more information?
Well, there is a lot of information out there about servant leadership. The Greenleaf Center for Servant Leadership, it's now in Atlanta, Georgia, but they have a lot of online training materials and different webcasts and different things that you can participate in. There's also the Servant Leadership Institute out of California, which is another great resource. There's a number of books, some of them that I had mentioned earlier, on servant leadership. And of course, community leadership programs are a great way to learn about servant leadership. We have over 3,000 community leadership programs across the nation. And so pretty much any community you live in has one. And that's a great place to not only learn about it, but find ways to practice servant leadership. And there's no better way to really learn about it than just to dig right in and practice the concepts, make sure you're a good listener, make sure that you're practicing empathy, walking in someone else's shoes, making sure that you have high integrity, making sure that you're a person that people can trust, that they know they can come to you and that you're going to have their best interests at heart. Those are all great ways to get involved and learn more.
Great. And what advice would you give to someone that is just learning about servant leadership?
I would say, along with what I said in the last question, that they really need to practice it. They really need to experience it too, being on the other end of someone serving them. So finding a mentor, and that's why I'm so excited that you're doing this. I just think this is a great resource for our community and more communities to talk about servant leadership and the importance of finding a mentor, someone who can share with you their knowledge, their wisdom, and help you to grow and develop. Because after you've had that experience, you want to pay it forward. You want others to have the same feeling that you have. And the more we can spread that and make it contagious, it excites me a lot, because the better our community and the better off our world's going to be if we can keep servant leadership going and encourage more people to become servant leaders.
Great, thank you.
Juliann, thank you for sharing your views on servant leadership today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being a part of this. It really was.
Listeners can find more information about Juliann Jankowski and the Association of Leadership Programs at www.alp.leaders.org. Thank you for listening, and our next interview will be with Mayor Pete Buttigieg next month.
The opinions expressed in this program are of the guests and are not explicitly those of the Operation Transmit Leadership Group. Our guests are volunteers and have donated their time to promote servant leadership.
This Operation Transmit Leadership program was produced by Kyle Bradamus, Kayla Myers, Mike Davolsky, Jody Russell, Laura Veramontes, and Chris Wolf. You can find more programs on our Facebook page, Operation Transmit Leadership.
Any views or opinions represented in this series of audio interviews are personal and belong solely to Operation Transmit Leadership and do not represent those of people, institutions, or organizations that the owner may or may not be associated with in professional or personal capacity, unless explicitly stated. Any views or opinions are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, or individual. All content provided on the audio program series is for informational purposes only. Operation Transmit Leadership will not be liable for any errors or omissions in this information, nor for the availability of this information. The program, producers, and participants will not be liable for any losses, injuries, or damages from the listening, displaying, or any other use of this content or information. Any content usage or reproduction is not authorized without the explicit approval of the Operation Transmit Leadership team.